All right, everyone, welcome to Tonecast 103. I'm Brian Porter. I'm here with McQ Olsen from Extra Mile Arena. McQ will bring you on just in a second here. For those watching on YouTube, we're here checking this. You can see our ugly mugs, I guess, as we go. I'm excited to talk to McQ about some industry stuff, some venue stuff. We had him on episode 72 way back in summer of 2020, I believe it was. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were on back then, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of this interview in a second, but I want to mention our pickup chooser. This is a simple form you can fill out if you're looking for a new set of pickups for your guitar. You can fill this form out. We'll help you with some suggestions. It's kind of like writing a prescription. So we're kind of the tone doctors, if you will, and you can fill this out. We'll write you a prescription for some new tones for your guitar. So McQ, how are you today? We're going to bring you on here and in the studio, and excited to kind of continue this conversation that we started a long time ago.
Definitely. It's good to be here. It's good to be next to you. Last time we chatted, I think we were on the phone and doing the Zoom bots, and
oh man,
boy, it's nice to get out and about and see folks and see people returning to events.
Yeah, definitely. I know that we talked about in 72, we talked about that whole dynamic from the music venue's perspective of being shut down and kind of figuring out how to reopen, and this whole journey that comes to now we're kind of starting to have shows again and regular shows. So maybe bring us back to that point of, I know we talked about everything from being inspired by music and kind of the purpose behind music, and even before we jumped on, you were asking me about, have I been to any shows lately, and things like that. But talk about that period from kind of when we last, maybe into that fall of 2020, and as you started looking at booking shows and kind of that transition into like shows actually happening.
Yeah, we were fortunate as a venue. A lot of venues did totally close their doors and totally shut down 100%. And we were fortunate being on a college campus where we could actually serve a need and become a classroom for different, business 101, Guitar 202 was having they were having their classes in our building. And so we were able to fill a need, and that was cool. And that was nice to be able to continue on with our mission. But what we saw, in the transition was, really auditing what other venues were doing. Everybody was getting their COVID signage. Everybody was putting stickers on seats, sit here, don't sit there. We did that, and we activated that. And like I said, very fortunate that we never shut down. And then we, new terms started popping up and bubbling up in the industry of limited capacity events.
Right.
Our first basketball games were limited capacity, where you would maintain social distance and your crowd would be away from everybody, and you'd have COVID policies, and people would question those or not question those, and you would do your best to make events happen. And then the industry changed again and went from limited capacity to full capacity events. And so that's a new world, and the new age that we're in now is returning back to live. I think that our arena in Boise, never, like I said, never shut down. So we never had the time where we were not live. So we were always live, but now it's returning to fully
live. Yeah. So as you're looking at events in those early days of limited capacity, how did that affect the financials? Obviously, if you have half the amount of, or a third of the amount of people, how did you start to kind of make that part of it work?
Sure. I think that's one of the things that the industry really struggled with. How do you make touring work where, one place might be at full capacity, one place might be at limited capacity. And I don't think tours really figured it out ever.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't work. I don't think the model works that way.
Yeah.
You have to have your full capacity. You have to have your full revenue streams to make things work.
Sure. So did in those instances where it was, adjusted capacity, did it kind of everyone take a hit collectively, the venue and the band and the booking agents, tour people? Was that how it kind of worked?
We never experienced that. We went from our limited capacity events were Boise State athletic events at that point, high school graduations. So yeah, I think everybody took a hit in a way where, you have the culmination of your high school learning, and yet you're going to walk through your graduation. And, how does that look when, you're 6 feet from your friend on your left and your right, and, you can only invite, 4 people to attend.
You've got to tell grandma she can't go. She can't go.
So, there is definitely a loss and definitely a price to be paid for that, and I think that that's what we really experienced, was seeing the kind of that emotional price that people would pay for those events.
That makes sense. And so there was the wrestling of when is the right time to switch to capacity, maybe following guidelines or kind of that return to normal. But how did you deal with the fact that concerts for a venue of the size of Extra Mile Arena, how did you deal with scheduling those? Because it's not like they're scheduled a week in advance.
I think that you just drew a line in the sand and you said, here we go, we're going for it.
Yeah.
And, our first one was October of last year, and so that was our first full capacity event, and you went with it, and you hoped that it worked, and you were watching to see if the tour kicked off in other markets, and we were early, and it was U.S. Olympians, and the Olympics just closed, and you introduced COVID policies and everything else, and it's the brave new world at that point.
Yeah. So in a way, someone had to be the first one to kind of almost fall on the sword, if you will, of public opinion in some ways. When I've seen venues just get railed on for being open, and sometimes they're like, well, how do I got to pay everyone. At some point we need to have a show, and you got to kind of have to be the first one to take the stumble, I guess.
I don't think that people realize the full economic impact that venues even do. It's not just who you're employing and what you're doing, but what is the reach of 10, 12,000 people coming to your venue, and what does that have on your community? And so I think that the reach of venues is so far, and I think that people are realizing that and seeing the true impact that live events and coming together really creates.
Yeah, we talked about, I remember that conversation of like, wow, this is going to be something that we are going to miss more than we thought. I mean, obviously missing, the financial parts of it, and even musicians that we've talked to are like, man, I'm not sure where the income's going to come from, because that's how we make it, by playing the live shows. And, I think seeing things come back is super encouraging for us as a gear company. We obviously need people playing gigs and playing shows, and that's usually where their gear money comes from too. So that you're right, there's a trickle-down effect all the way to the manufacturers, to the guys selling popcorn at the events and all that. So kind of as shows started back up, I know that there were certain states and certain areas that were a lot more restrictive in different policies as far as vaccine, no vaccine, and I don't want to get too deep in the waters there, but how did you kind of land on your official policies for your venue? I know you said full capacity, and kind of how did you make the determinations of how to make it look, I guess?
Sure. For us, we were fortunate because we had a public health authority with Boise State that was really kind of dictating what was going on, Okay. So you kind of follow, you follow your local guidance, you follow your public health authorities, and that's how you make it work, and if folks say, put the pedal down and let's reopen, or let's pump the brakes, then that's what you do. And I guess the word that everybody used during COVID was pivot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
sure.
Everybody but learned how to do something different and how to change your routines.
Sure. Did you find yourself in the center of any conflicts as far as the opinions on either side of the equation, whether it's masks or whether it's other policies?
Oh, sure. I think that's a tough job to enforce a policy where people might not agree.
Sure.
It's a tough gig, and we saw people traveling from other states to Idaho, and Idaho was a little more lax on COVID restrictions, and you'd get the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Do I need a vaccine for this?
Sure.
And you'd say, oh no, but I think that everybody had kind of that little moral dilemma of, am I doing the right thing? But
sure.
In the end, that's what you do.
Yeah, trying to navigate that part of it on top of the reopening, on top of the financials. And so how's your stress level now that shows are happening? Is it better than it was? Or are you still feeling like overwhelmed with what you just walked through for the last 2 years?
We definitely, the return to full capacity events was definitely fast and swift, and event days are long. The 16-hour days, the 18-hour days for our production crews, our operation guys that work 20 hours. That's a brutal gig. And you have to really love bringing those alive events to the community to be able to do that. It takes a special craziness to want to do that. And it's a lot of time, but boy, it's neat to see the community coming together and different fans and different groups come through, and the sheer impact of that.
Yeah. So have you sensed kind of a renewed energy from the groups and the bands and just the traveling people to kind of be like, man, we're back in the routine? Because that was, I know many artists I talked to were like, this has been my life for every weekend for as long as I can remember, and all of a sudden they got 18 months off, so how was that initial kind of like excitement level, or was there caution? What was the vibe, I guess, of the first few shows?
The vibe is, fans are excited to be there. I can't speak for the artist side. I don't see much of that. A lot of people think that if you work at a venue, you see all that, but you really don't. And you're lucky to see the fans come in your building. But I would say that the fans are super excited to be back. I think the events that you might have postponed or rescheduled or whatnot, I think that you see less folks attend those. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they don't know if the show is still really going on. But I think that anything that's gone on sale and played out post-COVID or whatever era we're in now, those shows are rocking, and people are there, and people are excited to be there and be engaged.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that's been encouraging for us. I know there's a big trade show that has been canceled. We actually went to this trade show before the world caught on fire in 2020, in January of 2020, and then a few weeks later, all of our deals were gone, kind of like your shows. Basically, everything was just gone. But that's coming back in June, and so there's starting to be some semblance of normal. And you're right. I think the hunger for live music is coming back, and people are excited about it, I think. And that's just probably for you seeing all the seats full instead of every other row or the things that we had to do to adjust. Sure. It's definitely got to be exciting. So what does it look like now going forward? Do you feel like you mentioned kind of whatever normal we're in? I mean, it's definitely more normal than it was, obviously, for all of us. But what does that look like going forward? Even in the event of, we've seen like different variants of the virus. We've seen other things kind of start to creep up again, and we're like, oh no, are we here for the next round? What's your optimism like going forward from here?
I think that touring and shows are coming back and being cautious and being optimistic about it. I think that there's bubbles in touring where people are staying within their bubbles and more limited access to artists or artist management.
Sure.
So I think that that's something that's here to stay for a little while, where the access to those folks might be more limited in a set group. I think that tours will be unique. I think COVID policies will change on an event by event basis. I'd say check out any venue's website to see what's going on with your show, because you might not know, and it might be different. I was just at a show last night with my family, and my wife said, "Hey, what are the policies?" And I'm like, "Oh, there's none for this one. We're good to go." So it was just participating. So
sure, and especially in the case of traveling to shows, some people like to go to shows in different states and areas, and being aware of any possible issues you might run into or restrictions, things like that, is always good. And so then when it comes to now sporting events and other events in the arena, as things kind of are back to normal, is it kind of like, do we make up ground kind of philosophy, or do you still kind of keep the same schedule as far as the amount of events? Or
Well, it feels like the amount of events are heavy right now, but I think that's a lot of things playing off and a lot of things kicking off as well. So it feels a little heavy, but boy, it feels good to see people enjoying themselves and being in the house. And I don't know what the levels will look like, but there's a ton of good shows going on sale and playing out, and it's up to people and their comfort level. It's something that's supposed to be fun. So if it's not fun for you, then don't go yet.
Yeah, well, and I think there's the mental side. I mean, a couple podcasts ago, we interviewed a gentleman that makes acoustic guitars, and his whole theme is mental health and kind of the toll that not only the whole pandemic took on all of us, but just kind of like you mentioned, music and what a great tool music is to kind of cheer you up and put you in or maybe it puts you in a rager mood for a metal concert, but that's okay. Like it's a way to kind of express ourselves, whereas a lot of these things were just kind of cut off from our lives. And how cool is it for you to be a part of spearheading maybe some people's mental health improving?
Sure, and I think even with that, even connecting with the artist, through purchasing some of their merch or something like that, making that memory of the ticket stub or the CD or the vinyl LP that you bought at that show, that there's something that we are making memories, and we had a couple of years where we didn't, and now we're back to making those memories, and I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a really great way to think about it. And again, it's the trickle down even for us as we make pickups and products that go in other guitars. It's all about keeping the inspiration alive, and maybe maybe we inspire someone to be the next Santana or the next whoever, right? To go and play at these venues. But it's all this system that works together, and the money's gotta, from a business side of everything, the money's gotta be flowing from the top down, if you will, and if it's not, I mean, that affects all of us. And I think that's probably probably looking at a 20,000 foot view of how the ecosystem of the music industry works, and when there was significant holes in the music industry for a long time, I think it just really kind of blasted all of us.
Sure, I think it took something away from us, and that being a fan is something that is in everybody, and everybody needs to be a fan, even if you don't think you are in some way.
Yeah, there's a few people I've heard say, I don't like music, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Stay away from me, kind of thing. But McQ, thanks so much for being on the show today. Let's go ahead and close with just how to find out about Extra Mile Arena for those who are in town or maybe out of town, want to come in for a show at Extra Mile Arena. And then on YouTube, if you have any comments you want to leave below, love to kind of share your first gig experience or your first show experience, or maybe your first show back, like you were talking to me earlier. I think what's been your first show back after COVID?
What was your first show back?
I'm still working on that, actually.
You gotta get to work.
Well, there wasn't many options. That was kind of the thing, right? There just wasn't that many options. So,
well, how to get hold of us? We're on all the social channels. Check out extramilearena.com. Always remember, check out your venue page. Your venue page is always going to get you to the right tickets. We need to be buying from the primary source, not those secondary guys. Okay, well, I gotta talk about that then before we officially go off. So buying from the primary source versus the other guys, you say. Sure. How does that impact you as a venue owner? A sold ticket's a sold ticket in the end. And so if secondary markets are going to buy up tickets, they're going to buy up tickets. Sure. The unfortunate thing is when that secondary market sells that ticket to 3 different people, and that's a bummer. For a lot of venues, the first scanned ticket into the facility is the valid ticket, and so if there are 3 or 4 tickets floating around with the same barcode or whatnot, it's a buyer beware market. So I always say that every venue page is going to get you to the right place to buy.
Nothing worse than showing up to the show and you're already sitting inside, right? But you're not actually sitting inside.
And you're done.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, because that's definitely something that for those looking for show tickets is a really good reminder to make sure that you don't don't get caught in that, even if it, you know, probably sometimes those deals might look too good to be true, right?
Sure.
We're like, oh man, that's cheaper than the venue price, but they're selling 3 of them, so they don't get,
Or,
you know, they don't.
or are those tickets really $450? Probably, you know.
True.
Probably not.
Yeah, but then you do have the legit places that,
Sure.
that do want to kind of make money off the shows, which always happens, I guess. Yep. All right, well, thanks so much for being on the show, and you guys can check us out at porterpickups.com. Definitely support your live music venues. McQ, thanks for being on the show today. Really appreciate having you, and it was a good conversation. Enjoyed it.
Thanks.